Big Podcast.
It's Big Podcast Playbook, the marketing podcast for podcasters. My name is David Hooper. BigPodcast.com is the website. Let's define Big Podcast. What does that mean to you? It's not just likes and attention. It's making impact. It's making money. It's knowing that all the work you put into your podcast, it's moving people, impacting people. It's giving them something that if you went away, they would miss it. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. Kim Coda sent me some stuff about being a great guest and being a great host. Part 1, you can find it in the feed. And the feed, you can get that by subscribing at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. What you will find there is an entire episode about how to be a great host, specifically a host that is doing interviews. If you're doing an interview format podcast, or maybe you're doing like me, sometimes I do long form documentaries, I do man on the street stuff. I've done it all. Hundreds and hundreds of interviews over the years. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I know how to get the interview that you want from somebody. And I go into that on the last episode. Again, it's in the feed, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. We're going to talk about how to be a great guest. And let me back up a minute. I mentioned about Kim Coda. She sent me this. I think this is from social media. This is something she found online. She said, I'd like your comment on these, please. And let me give you an example. We'll go through the first one here. This is somebody talking about what makes a great guest. He said, what makes a great interview is when the guest has something to say and they're willing to say it more than something to sell. That shows up in their vulnerability, authenticity, and their intention. And it's pretty easy to spot too, from their initial reach out email to pre-recorded chat. If there's a vulnerability and authenticity in their why, it's a go. If it's about their product and not them as a person, it's a pass. Let's break that down a little bit. Let's take it part by part. He said, what makes a great interview is when the guest has something to say. I agree with that. Not just the, hey, what's up? You ever listen to talk radio? That is people who are on the air that don't necessarily have something to say. They just want to talk. And sometimes you'll hear this with podcasters themselves. They don't have anything planned. They feel like they need to get an episode out. So, hey, what's up? Yeah, man, just want to get this episode out. Hey, how you guys doing out there? We're doing great here. Not really something to say, not a message, not something that you're flying the flag on and seeing if people salute it. So I do agree with that. A guest needs to have something to say in an interview. But as I talked about, part of getting that guest to say something is your skill as an interviewer. And again, part 1 has that, bigpodcast.com/subscribe if you haven't heard it. I can get a story out of just about anybody. There's something within most people that an audience, maybe not your audience, would find interesting. There's a saying that if you really knew somebody's story, you're not going to judge them. You're not going to be mad at them. You're going to feel like you get where they are coming from. And I'll give you an example of this. I was walking in downtown Nashville the other day, and I see this dude every day. I walk past him almost daily. A big dude. I would say this guy's, I don't know, pushing 300 pounds. Big guy. And he sits on the curb and he's talking maybe to himself, maybe to me. I mean, he looks at me. I see him smoking. It seems to be a homeless guy. I've also seen him passed out, gut hanging out, passed out on the street. Not a good thing. He's either sitting down or in that one case, lying down on the street. I think, man, that guy's got to have a story. Could I get it out of him? I don't know. I don't know if he's got addiction or mental illness. There's a reason why he is there. And that's the story. Can you get it out of him? Yeah, probably. If you spent enough time with him, can you get it out of him in 10 minutes? I don't know. I don't know if the guy's ready to talk or not. Sits there with a couple bags and he's talking to somebody. Doesn't really speak up. I kind of acknowledge him, give him a nod. I try to be kind to people when I go by, but I don't necessarily engage people. Now, I would say that this guy's pretty vulnerable. He's being authentic, at least as much as he can. You're seeing him in his raw environment. We don't know what his intentions are. He might say he needs money for food. Maybe the intentions are something else. Who knows? Is that going to make him an interesting interview? I don't know. I think there's a difference between a great story being there and maybe the great story is just something you can connect to. So, yeah, you know, I got divorced and it was devastating to me, or I've had an issue with alcohol. That's been pretty devastating in my life. Or maybe I overeat. You're going to connect with this guy in some way. Is it a story that's going to be interesting for a podcast? Well, That's one of the things that makes a great host. I didn't really talk about that on the first part of this, so let me add it now. Part of being a great host is once you get the story, does it need to be released? It doesn't make somebody a bad guest if the story isn't released. It's just not the story for your podcast. So I don't know if I agree with this or not. I think this guy's on something: vulnerability, authenticity, intention. Yeah, that stuff is important. But if you can't get the story that's for your audience, that's neither good nor bad. That's just what it is. It's just not for your audience. It doesn't mean they're a bad guest or a bad person, or it's even a bad story. So I'm kind of in the middle on that one. He says if it's about their product and not them as a person, it's a pass. Well, maybe. Imagine this. This is a podcast on podcasting, specifically growing an audience, delivering content that connects with people. Say I've got a rep from Electro Voice. They've got a new version of the RE20. It's a legendary mic. I'm speaking into one now. Maybe that's a great thing for me to talk about as far as you creating great content for your podcast. Do we care about the guy that I'm talking to? No. Do we want to go into the history of the RE20? Maybe. In that case, product over people, not bad. Should the person be likable? Sure. But likability or telling somebody's story, that's not necessarily the goal of an interview like that. The interview is to actually promote the product. So I'm kind of in the middle of what this guy says. If it's about the product and not them as a person, it's a pass. That's going to depend on your podcast. Sometimes it is about the product. Second thing from Kim, it's a list of 7 things. These make you a great guest. Let's go through them one by one. Willingness to fill out a form. 2, the ability to show up on time. 3, excited to share their expertise. 4, eager to talk and share actionable tips. 5, happy to share your podcast with their audience. 6, leaves your review, Apple or Spotify, their choice. 7, becomes part of your trusted network. All right, willingness to fill out a form. Maybe. I've done a lot of interviews with celebrities. I talked about music business radio in the first part of this. This is my music business radio show, also a podcast. I'll give you an example of somebody who came to me. I'm not going to make her fill out a form. Dolly Parton. The publicist came. Do you want to interview Dolly? Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I don't care how she shows up. Tin can and a string, it's good. She wants me to come to her. I'm going to do it. Oh, it's in New York? Okay, cool. I'll fly it from Nashville. I'm going to do whatever it takes because I want that interview. I don't care if she fills out a form or not. The ability to show up on time, yeah, that's nice. To talk about Dolly specifically, she was in the middle of a press junket. She had an album called Rockstar. She's talking to all sorts of media outlets about it. I was one of those. I think we started at like 11:57. It was to the minute. It was not noon. It was 11:57. Maybe that's because they wanted me there on time and they've got her with me at noon. Maybe it's because the guy before her just happens to get 7 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever that guy's got. That's the way that it works. And she wants to get as many of these things in. She doesn't want to do it at the top of the hour, the quarters, the bottom of the hour. I don't know. But you do want somebody to show up on time. And I will say this, that you showing up on time as the host, or if you're a guest as the guest, that is important. But that's not the only reason that I'm going to interview you. I want the story. I want the content. I want something that my listeners are going to like. They don't know if you're on time or not. It's nice for me. It makes my life a lot easier. It's not the number one thing for me. With that said, if I ever do an interview with you, yeah, show up on time. Excited to share their expertise? Yeah, obviously. You want somebody who's excited to talk to you. Sometimes some people really don't want to be there, and there'll be those celebrity interviews maybe that you do, or something that a publicist or a PR agent hooks people up with, and it's you. And they haven't heard of you. You're not Good Morning America, or you're not Oprah or Saturday Night Live or a big late night show. Like, it's just a podcast. They're not going to be that excited. Or maybe they're like Dolly, where they're in a press junket, and you're the 10th person that they have done an interview with that day. Excited to share their expertise. Sometimes you, as a host, you bring that out of them. I'm not going to sit here and use this episode to drop names of all the people that I have interviewed. But I will say this in general. It's happened more than once. Sometimes I'll get into these interviews with somebody that, let's say it's a household name or household-ish name in the rock music space. They've got a hit. They've got a few big albums, and they've got some other stuff that they've done before they had a big hit, a few hit albums, or maybe some solo stuff they've done That's in addition to those hits or big albums that they did with a group. I've had people come in, they're with a duo, with a full-on band, and I know the solo stuff, and when I start talking about that, woo, they get really excited. Really? You know what? I will drop a name. John Oates from Hall & Oates. I was doing an interview with him, and I asked him about an album they had called Ecstatic. He's like, man, you had that album? I go, yeah. He's like, oh, we didn't sell many of those. But he knew I had done the work. He knew I was a fan. And at that moment, he was in. He was going to work just as hard as I was working to get a great interview, and it was a great interview. So excited to share their expertise. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. That's sort of your job as a host. You do want them to show up, come correct, but you can bring a lot of that out of them when you show up and come correct yourself. Eager to talk and share actionable tips. Yeah, that stuff is nice. If you're looking for actionable tips, sometimes you just want a story. Eager to talk. Again, sometimes that's you bringing that out of them. That is a skilled host. Don't leave it up to a guest for you to have a great interview. You show up, they will match your energy. Happy to share your podcast with our audience. That's the last thing that I worry about. Let's take it back to Dolly Parton. She's doing, let's say, 10 interviews that day. She's a big superstar. She's not going to share with all her people. I was talking about the music business with her, the behind the scenes of that album that she's promoting. It wasn't the typical, tell me about working with Ann Wilson. It wasn't that. It was a lot deeper than most. And that's another thing, by the way. When you show a guest, you really get what they're doing, not just that surface level stuff, not just the songs, the hits. Show them you understand they are a real person. They're going to show up more for you. Leave your review, Apple or Spotify, don't care. Can you imagine that? Hey, Dolly, would you mind leaving me a review on Apple or Spotify? She's like, what? She didn't know what that is. She's doing different kinds of media. You know, and I feel like that's a quid pro quo. One of the things that it doesn't really matter to me. I want a good interview from my listener. And this gets back into hosting. Are you taking care of your listeners? Yeah, you want to take care of guests, but are you taking care of your listeners? Listeners first. When you do that, then you're going to be able to attract the great guest. You hear for the great guest, you get a good interview. You see how this works. Fourth thing, becomes part of your trusted network. Look, no, you're getting an interview, man. You're not getting friends. I mean, maybe you're going to connect with somebody. Hey, man, let's catch up later. Sometimes I have people ask me, hey, man, we got to go out, get drinks. My focus is the listener. It's not necessarily extending this interview beyond the interview. I want to have a moment in time with you. I'm showing up. I expect you to show up. I'm going to ask questions. If you don't want to answer them, you can turn them down, but I do expect you to work with me to get a good interview. And then we're done. Our job is done. This isn't something that's going to extend for months or years or even weeks or days. We're going to spend a couple hours together and then we are done. So I don't care if you're going to be part of my trusted network or not. What I hope you have, and this does happen, if I show up with everything that I've got and I provide an opportunity for you to show up with everything that you've got, we have that connection that if you ever need to come back and promote something like another album, or if I ever need another great interview, I can come back to you. But it doesn't mean we're going to hang out. So if that's what you mean by trusted network, yeah, maybe. Third person on the list, I guess these are different people, reinventing your story over and over again. I think many guests I listen to on podcasts have one or two stories that they milk in every other podcast. Same examples, same story, while accomplished guests have many stories or examples to get their points across. I think to be a great podcast host or a great guest, it's important for you to live. The example that I have given many times about this, ironically, to go against what this guy is saying, when I was in music school, I've got a degree in music, there were the people that were playing clubs every night and understanding what music they were playing, what they needed to do on stage to connect with people. And there were the people that instead of going out to a club and performing on stage, were in practice rooms with that metronome, tick, 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 and they're running scales and modes and trying to polish whatever they're playing so that it is perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. Does it connect with the person who is listening? And I say person, not people, because you're trying to connect with one person at a time. Podcasts, they are listened to by people who are by themselves, either in a car, in headphones. You're connecting to one person at a time. Don't worry about people, worry about person. to take that back to you being a host or you being a guest, you have different examples. Go out and live, man. The issue that you find with a lot of podcasters is they go to the same people because they know they're a solid interview and they do research by listening to these other interviews. So they're asking the same questions. Of course, you're going to get the same stories. A skilled guest, yeah, you're going to have different stories that you tell, but sometimes people want the greatest hits. And sometimes if somebody is selling a product, they're going to go back to those stories because they know those stories sell. And sometimes people want to hear you play the hits. If I go to see a Bachman Turner Overdrive show, I want to hear Taking Care of Business. I want to hear You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. Don't play me the new stuff. Boo. Not the new stuff. True story. Speaking of solo acts that used to be with a bigger band, Dennis DeYoung is the singer of Styx. Great singer. He was doing a gig on the rooftop of the Peabody Hotel in Memphis. So, man, this is going to be great. It's Dennis DeYoung on a grand piano, acoustic show, couple backup singers. He's playing these Styx hits, The Best of Times, Lady. I mean, it's great, right? Everybody's into it. And then he says, how about some Broadway? And we're like, what? No, man. Play Mr. Roboto or something. We came here for the Styx stuff, man, not Broadway. I want to respect the man as an artist, but it goes back to taking care of your listeners, right? Put your listeners first. They're going to let you know what they want. Once they trust you, yeah, maybe you bring one in, maybe two, but nobody's going to see Dennis DeYoung play a full show of Broadway. That's why he tours with these Styx songs still. The voice of Styx. That's why that's on the marquee. It's not a Dennis DeYoung show. You were seeing the voice of Styx. And you want to see that same thing or hear that same thing, in this case, from the podcast guests that you have. You do. You want to hear them talk about what you want them to talk about. So reinvent your story over and over again. Yeah, that is good. You want to keep people on your toes, but understand that sometimes these guests that you've got, they are doing it because the audience, your listeners, want to hear those stories, or because there are a lot of listeners that don't even know who these people are. You as a podcaster, you listen to a lot of podcasts. This guy's listening to a ton. He's heard the same guest. That guest is telling the same stories. Yeah, that's you, man. Most people have heard zero of those podcasts, none of them. They haven't even heard the first one. So it's new to them. You've got to understand that. It might be old to you. It's probably old to the guy talking about it, but there's a reason that he's telling that story. Fourth thing here, be human. As someone who's been in front of the camera and behind it, and the podcast microphone as well, the moment somebody hits record, people clam up and they think they have to have the perfect answers for everything, and it just reads as weird. Yes, you should know the basics of why we're showing up, but your overthinking makes it hard to have a conversation. If you're a guest, let the host guide you. It's actually not your job to push things along. And for the love, like the love of God, I guess she's saying, please have fun, laugh, joke, share a story that randomly comes to mind. Be the guest you would want to listen to. Out of all the things that Kim sent me, this is my favorite one. So let's dive into it. Be a human. Boom. 100%. Your listeners are not expecting your guest to be perfect. Your guest, they're not expecting you to be perfect. This person says, as someone who's been in front of the camera and behind it and the podcast microphone, the moment someone hits record, people clam up and they think they have to have the perfect answers for everything, and it just reads as weird. You can tell from this answer that this person has experience. We call it red light syndrome. You're talking to somebody in the pre-interview, and by pre-interview, I mean just hanging out with them in the studio. I talked about that on the last episode, the first part, how I act as a host. I'm taking you around the studio if we're in person. Check this out. Hey, let's get some photos for social media. We're hanging out. They're great. The moment that red light comes on, welcome to the show. I get into host mode. Hey, everybody, David Hooper here. We've got a great guest today. Kim Coda is here. I get into that mode. Then they think they've got to get into the mode. Ultimately, it's nice, but if you're working with somebody that doesn't have that experience, or if you're a guest and you don't have that experience, that's something that's going to take a little bit of time. For most people, the majority of people, it's going to take a minute for you to become comfortable talking into a microphone or on camera. This thing that I've got right now, the delivery that I've got, I didn't always sound like this. If you listen to old air checks that I've got, if you listen to Music Business Radio, the very first one, awful. Hello, everyone. You've been there, right? All podcasters have been there, and guests are that way too. This is one of the reasons that you want to warm guests up in a pre-interview, let them know they can trust you. I would say at the very beginning, hey, listen, I'm just going to go hit record so I don't forget to hit record. We're not starting the show yet. Don't make a big deal out of it. Hit record. I mean, don't use anything that you're recording. It's not a gotcha thing. You're not trying to secretly record them. You're letting them know, and then you're going on about your business. Then you go into the show. You don't need to make a big deal about it. The bigger deal you make, if they're an inexperienced guest, you're likely to get that clammed up reaction. She's saying, yes, you should know the basics of why we're showing up. Well, who's in charge of that? That's you as the host. This isn't you versus them, host versus guest. You are working as a team. So work with your guests. Talked about it on the last episode. That's why you call them a guest. You're taking care of them. Work with them so they know why you are interviewing them. Also, ask them what's going to make this a great interview for you. That's going to build that trust that helps you get a better interview from them. Oh, this guy's got my back. She says it like this. She said, if you're a guest, let the host guide you. It's not your job to push things along. That is true. And that's something you're going to want to say to a guest, especially somebody who's got an album, somebody's got a book. Let me take it back to my music business example. Let's go for Bachman Turner Overdrive. Dennis DeYoung. Those guys are still making music. And by that, I mean they are making new music, writing it, recording it, performing it. My people want to talk about taking care of business. They want to talk about you ain't seen nothing yet. If you're a Dennis DeYoung fan, they want to talk about sticks. But it's okay for you to say, hey, listen, I want to start with where you were. Let's talk about taking care of business, how you got here. How did you get these big hits? What was that like? And let's move on to the new stuff. Give them a nod. That's okay. Your listeners are going to appreciate that too. I was joking around about Dennis DeYoung doing Broadway music. Broadway. Well, some people like Broadway. And if those people are listening to your podcast, yeah, he's doing Broadway now. Let them know. You don't have to do a full show, but let them know. I'll give you a podcasting example that's the opposite of that. And this is something that I turned down. Joey Fatone from NSYNC, he was coming through. He was doing a cooking show. Didn't want to talk about music, or his publicist said that. He would have been probably fine. Seems like a cool guy. But publicist said, no, we don't want to talk about music. We want to talk about the cooking show. All right, cool. Why are you coming to Music Business Radio then? Because you're a musician. What do we talk about? We talk about music here. I'm happy to talk about the cooking show, how cooking parallels music. And let me give you an example. You're mixing flavors just like you're mixing different sounds. There's some big parallels with cooking and music. You're putting something together. You're testing it. See if it works. Then you're going to publish it, put it out to the world. Huge parallels. I will make that work, but I'm not going to just talk about the cooking show. That goes back to the sidecar thing that I was talking about. I can't have this famous guy in there with somebody who's a sidecar tagging along. There's a differential there. Hey, famous guy, what's it like to have a platinum record? Oh, you wrote a song once in high school? Oh, cool. Oh, you're playing the local coffee shop? Oh, neat. That doesn't work for an interview. And it's not going to work if you've got somebody who's famous for one thing and you're ignoring that fame. That's a differential. You're not talking about the old stuff, or you're talking about something completely different that person is doing. It's like, oh, we got this guy, he's got a TV show, and we're supposed to ignore the fact that he was in one of the biggest bands of all time? No! That's not taking care of your listeners, because your listeners see that name, they're wanting to know about why they know him, which in the case of Joey Fatone, that was music. So I like what she says. If you're a guest, let the host guide you. And if you're a host, we talked about this in the last episode, do not let the publicist or PR rep guide you. This is your show. For the love of God, please have fun, laugh, joke. Yeah, well, that takes a minute. And if you've got a podcast and you're here on Big Podcast Playbook, I'm assuming you do, realize this, that we are working with a lot of people that are on the come up. They don't have a lot of media experience. Maybe you're just talking to somebody with an interesting story. They're there because of the story, not the interesting experience. Well, that's where your hosting skills come in. This doesn't just happen. People think podcasts are just a conversation. Oh, man, we're just going to get on the mic. Man, I just like getting together with my boys. We talk about Doritos and we talk about NASCAR. Man, it's fun. We have a blast. People are going to love it. Maybe it's a had to be there moment. A little too insider. So I like what this guy's saying. Be human, have fun, trust the host. Good advice. That's my favorite on this list of advice on how to be a good guest. Fifth thing here, I'm a big feel the room energy person. You can't fake vibe. No, you can't, but you do have to develop vibe. Your podcast personality, it is you with a few zeros behind it. It's you with a megaphone in front of it. It's a little louder, bigger, bolder. You can't fake vibe, but you can expand on it. You learn how to do that by doing interviews. Just like being a good host, you got to be a bad host. To be a great host, you've got to be a good host. Same thing with guests. Now, if you are a great host, you can guide a guest through a pretty good interview. Those are the things that I was mentioning earlier. And that's why I bring up this topic here on Big Podcast Playbook. A lot of what makes a great guest, that's you as a host. It's completely fair for you to expect somebody to show up in a certain way. At the same time, do your part, man. If you really want the story, if somebody's got a great one, work with them to bring it out of them. This is on you too. The final thing, stories, anecdotes, memories, feelings, regrets, honesty, authenticity, and playfulness. That's a great list. The big one is the first one here, stories. And by episode notes, I'm not talking about what I post when I release an episode online. Not the timestamps, here's what's in this episode, nothing like that. I'm talking about handwritten notes that I've got. In fact, I've got notes in front of me right now, the things that Kim Coda sent me. They are typed up. I'm writing notes on it on a clipboard that I've had for 20-something years. Every episode I do, I've got a clipboard, one of two. One I've had for 20 years, one I've had for about 6 months. Had to get a new one. This thing's wearing out. I mentioned this clipboard to say, on these notes, I almost write to remind me to mention to the guest or to ask the guest during interviews. Stories. Tell me a story. Think of a story. I'll guide people into the story. I'll take it back to these musicians. Hey, Bachman Turner Overdrive. You ain't seen nothing yet? But baby, I heard that was an accident. Heard you actually making fun of your manager. Is that true? That's a story. And that's your research. That's you reminding them. And that's also their ability to tell the story. Sometimes you need to know. Sometimes they're going to make it a little bit easier. If they've got media experience, media training, they're going to bring those stories out. That's why you hear those same stories all the time. The thing I mentioned a minute ago. He says, reinventing your stories over and over again. Yeah, great. At least they're telling stories. Most of the time, people have never heard this stuff. You've seen these things online, TIL, today I learned, and it's something obvious to you. It's not obvious to them. It's not obvious to a lot of people. Most people have never heard these stories. So even if it's an old story, let them tell it. And we all got those stories. If I said, hey, how did you meet your wife? How did you meet your husband? You've got that story. You've told it a million times. You love telling it. Let people tell those stories. If it's something that truly they have told a bajillion times, you can take it out. But go ahead and get it. Why not? At least it's a story. That's number one that he says here. Yeah, the anecdotes, that's fun. Memories, feelings, regrets, honesty, authenticity. I feel like that's a given. I mean, I want an authentic person. It doesn't mean they need to tell me every single thing about themselves. I call this T&A. People say, I'm going to be transparent and authentic with you. Okay. That's like the guy who has to let me know what watch he wears. Oh, let me look at my Rolex. Or what car. Let's go get in my Tesla. Okay, yeah, dude, we know. You got a lot of money. Good. Just give me the time. Say, hey, let's go get my car. I don't need to know every detail about it. If you're going to tell people it's transparent and authentic, probably not. You know there's an audience. And by the way, if there's a mic in the room or an audience, we're all on stage. It's never completely transparent or authentic. Maybe we're that way with ourselves. Most of the time, we are not. How many times you lied to yourself? Yeah, everybody has. We fool ourselves. We think we're better than we are. We think we're worse than we are. I don't think authenticity is enough. I believe in the thought of it, the theory of it, the concept of it. But I don't think just somebody being honest or authentic with you is enough. It's certainly not as interesting as a story. It's more in line with one of those things like veteran owned or family owned. Who cares, man? I just need the service. I just need the product. Just deliver it on time. Good. You're veteran owned. You're a small business. Okay, cool. Don't get me wrong, man. I like to support small business. I like to support people that are doing good things. However, if I'm in a restaurant, I want my food quickly. I want my food to be tasty. I want a basic level of service. Being veteran owned or family owned or a small business, that's not enough. And that's the same thing with authenticity or some of these other things we've been talking about when it comes to being a great guest. Simply showing up, not enough. But when you got stories, when you show up with enthusiasm, that's a good start. If you want that first episode in this series, it is available to you. You can download it free. You can find it at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I've got 3 buttons for you. 1 for Android, 1 for iPhone. 1 is an RSS feed. So if you're listening on an Android device, yeah, the Android button. That's how that works. You're listening on an iPhone. I've got the iPhone button. And if you want an RSS feed, because you as a podcaster, you know what that is. And you can do something with it. I've got an RSS feed for you there. You'll find all of these at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. While you are there, I've got newsletters. I've got something I call AMP, the audio monetization program. If you want to work with me one-on-one, I'm happy to talk to you about that. Everything is at bigpodcast.com. Did you subscribe yet? If you have, you will get the next episode. One of the things I talked about a couple of episodes ago was a sponsorship. I'm not going to say it blew up. It just came to an end. It got a little bit messy. The person I've been working with for about 5 years, she left bigger and better things. The person who was there, not as easy to work with, didn't want to honor the deal. I walked away from it. Then she came back, wants to work. Well, I'm done, man. I've already walked away. So I may get into that. There's a lot of things that I can talk about. I've done hundreds and hundreds of episodes. I'm on the air daily. I've got a syndicated weekly show, Music Business Radio. I've talked about that. So I've got a lot of advice for you. And if you want to be a better podcast host, a better guest, or just a more successful podcaster, you're going to find that information here. Big Podcast Playbook. Thank you for listening. And if you've subscribed, I mentioned that, right? Yeah, I did. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. If you go there and subscribe, you will see me on the next episode. See you then.